Last year was tough for Oklahoma fans. They went 6-7 with a 3-6 mark in the Big 12 under first-year head coach Brent Venables. No one expected this, and after getting blown out by the likes of TCU and especially Texas, Sooner fans were not thrilled with the direction of the program, and right now, you can already sort of feel the fire underneath Coach Venables. Oklahoma really needs to have a bounce-back season in a really big way. They need to get back to being at the top of the Big 12, the quarterback play needs to improve, and all in all, they gotta win some more games. In today's video, I want to preview the 2023 Oklahoma Sooners. We're to go through their key players, talk about what happened last year, go through their schedule, talk about the major storylines, and ultimately try and predict how they'll do this season. But before we get started, quickly be sure to leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new and love college football content, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I could cover in my next one. Now let's get started and talk about Oklahoma football. So going into last year, the Sooners lost 7 players to the NFL and plenty to the transfer portal, and that was because head coach Lincoln Riley bolted for USC. The Sooners still had plenty of talent though, and brought in plenty of their own good transfers as well. Couple that with a good recruiting class, and many expected Oklahoma to be perfectly fine. They ended up getting predicted to finish second in the Big 12, and overall started out ranked number 9. In week 1, they'd play UTEP at home, which they won 45-13. A 33-3 beatdown against Kent State brought them all the way up to number 6 in the country for a road test against Nebraska. In a rematch against an old Big 12 rival, Oklahoma went into Nebraska and stomped them 49-14. All was looking pretty good for Oklahoma until week 4. They'd play Kansas State at home, and led by Adrian Martinez, he completely torched the Sooner defense, and after a couple late runs, helped them beat the Sooners 41-34. This was Oklahoma's first loss, dropping them all the way to number 18 in the country. The next 2 games didn't get much better, as they'd go on the road to TCU. At the time, the Horned Frogs were undefeated, but no one was really taking them seriously. They definitely did afterwards, as TCU won 55-24. It was big play after big play, and Oklahoma got humiliated and looked embarrassed and out of sorts on defense. The offense wasn't great either, and that did not change against Texas. In fact, it got a lot worse. In probably the most brutal game in Red River history, the Sooners got shut out 49-0 and were not even competitive. They went from 3-0 to 3-3 and the laughingstock of college football. I'm pretty certain that half the fan base wanted Coach Venables fired after that 3-game stretch, but they did kind of bounce back. Number 19 Kansas would come to town, and they ended up winning that game by 10 and got them back to winning. They then beat Iowa State and were now 5-3. They were starting to save the season, but then it ended up falling apart again. They lost by 3 at home to Baylor, which was not ideal, and then they went into Morgantown and lost to West Virginia by 3. They are now in serious danger of missing a bowl game, and games against Oklahoma State and Texas Tech were not going to be easy. Luckily, they took care of the Cowboys in Bedlam and beat number 22 Oklahoma State 28-13. This got them to 6 wins, but they would suffer their 6th loss in the final game against Texas Tech, which would be 51-48. The bright side was, for the most part, outside of those 2 blowouts, they were losing close games, so it wasn't like they were totally awful, but at the same time, those blowouts were bad, and losing close games is not typical for Oklahoma. They ended up making a bowl game in which they played in the Cheez-It Bowl against number 13 Florida State, and that was odd to me because I didn't think those 2 should have been playing, but once again, the Sooners lost by 3, falling to the Seminoles 35-32. The Sooners went 6-7, and this was absolutely embarrassing for them. This was their first losing season in a long time, and many are expecting Oklahoma to bounce back this year, and Brent Venables already has some fire under him. But who do they return, and what should we expect out of the roster? So first and foremost, taking a look at the quarterback position, you're to return Dillon Gabriel. Love him or hate him, he's probably going to be the starter, and that's not going to change. I think he's an above average quarterback at best, and not the kind of guy that Oklahoma fans are typically used to. The guy behind him, though, definitely is. Jackson Arnold was a 5-star recruit coming out of Guyer High School in Denton, and in my opinion, he is the next great Sooner quarterback, and the sooner he plays, the better the program will be. If Gabriel struggles throughout the early season, I could see Arnold stepping in right away and playing, but more than likely, Gabriel finishes out his last year, and Arnold takes over in 24. At running back, the Sooners lost Eric Gray to the NFL, so they'll have a couple of players who need to step up. The 2 guys who will most likely get to see the most time are Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk, both of which are sophomores. They also have Dalen Smothers and Caleb Hicks, plus veteran Marcus Major and Tawi Walker. Overall, the running back position has a lot of depth, but we'll have to see who steps up and becomes that star player. On the offensive line, you'll probably have Walter Rouse, Savion Byrd, Andrew Rahm, Tyler Guyton, and Caleb Schaefer, a transfer from Miami of Ohio. It's a huge question entering into the season for them, and many of them have not seen a lot of regular season snaps. They lost Anton Harrison and Wanya Morris, so the line's going to need to get a lot better this year, but right now it looks a little bit suspect. In terms of the wide receiver spot, they lost Theo Weiss to Mizzou, so here are the 6 guys who I expect to play the most. First, you'll have Jalil Farouk, you'll have Michigan transfer Andrell Anthony, and then redshirt senior Drake Stoops. Behind him, you'll have LV Bunkley Shelton, Jaquaze Petaway, and Gavin Freeman, the do-it-all athlete. Honestly, when I take a look at that depth chart, there is a lot of potential, but not a lot of proven talent, and with already a suspect offensive line, a new running back room, and just an average quarterback, I'm a little bit concerned about the offense. They do at least get Austin Stogner back, but it's not like he was that big of a star anyways at South Carolina. In terms of the defense, some of the key players I'm excited to watch are linebacker Danny Stutzman, cornerback Billy Bowman, defensive lineman Rondell Bothroyd, safety Reggie Pearson Jr., and another defensive lineman in Kelvin Gilliam. The defense is going to need to be much better than last year, but they did get some impact guys such as Trace Ford from Oklahoma State and Desan McCullough from Indiana. But you're probably asking, will it be enough for them to have a bounce-back season? That, I don't know. Let's go ahead and look at the schedule and see how many wins I think they're going to get. In week 1, the Sooners are going to play Arkansas State at home, and this game should be a win. The most intriguing part about it is Butch Jones will be coaching for his job. In week 2, they get a somewhat interesting matchup as they're going to play against SMU. If this game happened last year, I would have said it would have been competitive, but SMU lost Tanner Mordecai to Wisconsin, and I just don't think they're quite at the level of Oklahoma. It could be close until halftime, but Oklahoma will win this game, probably by 2 or 3 touchdowns. After that, they have a trap game against Tulsa, and honestly, that is weird. This game will be sold out, and is probably the biggest game at Tulsa in quite some time, and just like the SMU game, it could be close until half just for shock value, but Oklahoma's going to win and turn it on in the second half. That'll get them to 3-0, but how are they going to do against the rest of the Big 12? Well, they first start out with a road game against Cincinnati. I believe this will be Cincinnati's first Big 12 game in program history, so it's going to be full and it's going to be loud. I think Cincinnati has a pretty decent team this year. They have an experienced quarterback, and I think they're going to pull off the upset. I think it's about a 50-50 game, and Oklahoma gets their first loss of the year. After that, they return home to play against Iowa State, who just doesn't have an offense. Because of that, and the fact that it's at home, Oklahoma will win that game. That'll put them at 4-1 going into the Red River Showdown, which I think they'll once again lose. I mean, is there really any reason to believe that Oklahoma is going to win this game this year, especially based on the direction of both programs? Texas right now has a lot of hype and seemingly a lot more star power than Oklahoma, and with how it went last year, I think the Longhorns roll and give Oklahoma their second loss. After that, Dylan Gabriel will have a homecoming game against his former squad in UCF. And while this game is somewhat tricky, I still think OU is better on both sides of the ball, and I'm going to go ahead and chalk that up as another win. So far, that puts them at 5-2. Going into that road matchup against Kansas. While I love Jalen Daniels and the Kansas story, I'm not quite sure how they're going to do this year. They could either come out and be as good as last year, or they could go back to their old Kansas ways. If I had to put money on it, I'd probably say the latter, and I think Oklahoma will win this game pretty easily. After that, they have to go to Oklahoma State. This will be the final Bedlam game before the Sooners leave for the SEC, and it's going to be feisty, it's going to be loud, and this game should be entertaining. While I am somewhat concerned about Oklahoma State's quarterback spot, they're always seemingly well coached, and this game, in my opinion, is tricky. I still think OU is the better team, but with everything going on behind the scenes, I think it will be close, but I'm going to give the win to Oklahoma by 1 score. After that, they play West Virginia at home, which shouldn't be that difficult, but Neil Brown will be coaching for his job, and they've kept it close the last 2 years, so it could be closer than the experts predict. Still though, I'm going to give Oklahoma the win. After that, they travel on the road to play BYU for the first time in conference play, and I don't trust Keaton Slovis, but I do trust BYU as a whole. I don't think Oklahoma is going to win 10 games this year, so that in my opinion is their next likely loss, as it'll probably come on the road. That'll put the Sooners at 8-3 for a final regular season showdown against TCU. I think TCU is going to fall off in 2023, and Oklahoma's going to go out on top, and that'll get them to 9 wins. And that'll get them to 9 wins. Honestly, as I take a look at it, it's a pretty lame in week 9 wins, as outside of that Texas game, it's honestly kind of a pretty boring schedule, and I would have loved to see them play Kansas State or Baylor, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. I think the games against Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, and BYU are the 3 most challenging, and I only think they win one of those road games, which is going to come against Oklahoma State. Who knows though? BYU could easily lose to them, and maybe Oklahoma goes 11-1, or maybe they go 12-0. At this point, I don't know, but there's a lot of weaknesses on this team. There's a lot of what ifs, and Venables didn't have a great season last year, so I guess I have the Sooners going 9-3, but I'm not super confident in that. And honestly, they're just a huge what-if team with a lot that needs to be figured out. What do you guys think though? If you're an OU fan, you probably completely disagree with everything I'm saying, so be sure to let me know down below your thoughts, how you think this team will do, and also be sure to let me know what team I should cover in my next preview. Before you go, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.